Hello everybody, and welcome to the Friday edition of Video Clips. And a couple of announcements before we start. First of all, if you're not subscribed to my newsletter, my email address is pampopper@msn.com. And we do post these videos on BitChute and Parler as well. And our conference is coming up November 13 through 15, and you don't want to miss it here in Columbus, Ohio. Excellent weekend, great speakers, great fellowship, wonderful food. We have a cooking class that starts the conference off with our amazing cooking instructor, Beth Pryor, who's a pharmacist and very much into healthy eating, healthy cooking, that sort of thing. And then the lectures will be everything about cancer prevention and treatment to, of course, a lot of COVID-19. And one of the things that we're going to do is the end of the conference will be a panel discussion with a group of people talking about the new normal in a whole different light than what we were talking about yesterday when I was speaking about this ridiculous idea that we should all adapt to what our government has in mind for us, or what governments are increasingly showing that they have in mind for us. And so we're looking at the new normal as an opportunity to say, okay, things were going in a bad direction at the beginning of the year. We lived in a world where something like what we're experiencing could happen, and we don't want to go back to that, clearly. But I also don't want to never shake hands or hug somebody and only see people on Zoom either, right? I mentioned yesterday, taking no risk means a life not worth living, in my opinion. So what we want to talk about is, as we go back and we see what's happened, and we look at the rebuilding that has to be done. There's a lot of rebuilding that has to be done. We have small businesses in a shambles in many places, and the education system's collapsing, the medical system is collapsing. When things collapse, you have an opportunity to rebuild something maybe better than it was before. And that doesn't mean it was good that it collapsed. It just means that you make the best out of the situation in which you find yourself. And we're going to have a panel discussion about that I think you will find fascinating and also motivating and encouraging. And I think the positive view of things that we're going to present at this conference, it will be very, very helpful to people. Peter Bregan, Dr. Peter Bregan, one of our expert witnesses and the famous psychiatrist, he's going to be speaking. So some names that you recognize. So if you want information, you can email me, pampopper@msn.com. You also can go to our website, WellnessForumHealth.com. One of the ways you can support the work that we do is buy stuff from us. You might see some things that you like in terms of career training, educational programs, and that sort of thing, products that we offer. And by the way, go to MakeAmericans.freeagain.com and get yourself registered. We're also doing some great things ranging from lawsuits to homeschooling to working on vaccine mandates. So anyway, Friday is the day I talk about consequences, and that's what I'm going to do here. And this woman was sent to me by a woman whose brother is in a facility. He's disabled. My brother had a job. I'm just going to read this to you. He went on outings. He went shopping into my mom's house every week for family dinner. He loves the holidays and celebrating birthdays. Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and the winter birthdays, including his own, are a big deal. We're concerned that he won't be able to celebrate these either because of the governor and his draconian measures. That I also mentioned, no gifts are allowed in the facility. Because of all this, he missed St. Patrick's Day and Easter, summer picnics, fishing, and his outings with the rec center. My brother is developmentally and physically disabled, but he knows the seasons. He's already starting to have mental breakdowns, and the facility just wants to mask the symptoms instead of fight Columbus about the problem. We tried at least to be able to get him to my mom's house once a week, but they said he would then have to be quarantined for 14 days when he got back because he could infect everyone else. Unbelievable. It would be him leaving the facility once a week, even though the staff comes in from the community every day. I'm concerned that he's going to die in there very soon, but I can guarantee you it won't be from COVID. And she sends a picture of her brother in the facility, and she says it's almost like a correctional facility instead of a care facility. And the visits, the governor has opened this up so that we can have visits inside these facilities, but at this particular time, the young man is inside, and he can't, and you can see he just looks despondent. And these people have enough difficulty without having their routines taken away and their opportunities for interaction. And so she sent to me some correspondence that she had sent to legislators and to the governor's office, and of course there's not much forthcoming, and this is something that really bothers me. I would say probably 75% of the time when people write to their elected officials about something that's really devastating, like this young man is in increasingly bad shape, and I've written about people who have disabilities, who are disproportionately affected by all of this, sometimes because of a lack of understanding about what's going on, and really they need the social interaction and that sort of thing. So people write to their elected officials, and then they get back a form letter that says nothing at all. It's like, you know, somebody just copied and pasted and didn't even read what I just shared with you. So anyway, hoping that at some point in time, some of the things that we're doing will make a difference. And by the way, if you want to learn, we have one more opportunity for people to spend time with our attorney via teleconference. It's this Sunday at 7 p.m. with Tom Renz, who will talk about the lawsuit that has been filed and some of the finer points about it, updates and that sort of thing, and you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. So pampopper@msn.com if you want to participate in that. This next one comes from a woman who's an artist. She says, my painting group in Ocean Springs and its devolving consciousness regarding the COVID issue, it mirrors the big picture, the larger structure, the power of media brainwashing, and the potential for dangerous political stranglehold on the population. This is a spin-off group from a larger local art association. There are no lessons given. Rather, it's a group of artists who gather at a community center to draw and paint together. Many of them are very accomplished, and some have been recognized nationally. Most are in the senior age group. I'm a potter. I've operated an independent studio for 40 years. I've made a lot of sacrifices to do that, including working all the time as you do. The COVID situation has ruined my business. Shops and galleries were forced to close, with some closing permanently because they couldn't pay the rent and other associated costs, just like the restaurant owner that I had talked about in a previous video. I've lost those accounts. At some point, I'll be forced to sell my house and move because it's becoming difficult to support my overhead here. I'm 76, so that's a daunting task to take on at this age. Moving a studio is overwhelming. I've done it once before when I moved here to be of help to my aging father. I want and need to keep working. I listen to a lot of comments from people about what I do because they don't understand and don't have the passion or discipline to do it. They don't stop to realize it takes an unusual body of knowledge and level of skill to pull this off. They don't understand I have to work all the time. They also don't stop to realize that shop and gallery owners make their living off people like me who keep their shelves stocked. When their doors are forced to close, the consequences for me are obvious. It works both ways. I've always wanted to draw and paint, so I started attending the painting group in Ocean Springs. Now, instead of going there to practice our art and enjoy visiting with our friends, it's become a gathering of COVID neurotics playing a broken record in the background about masks and social distancing and the pandemic and the coming vaccine and how to stay safe and cases and deaths and all the rest of the stuff that we listen to all the time. I'm the only one standing up to this. Their minds are closed. And so I won't read the whole thing, but you know, listening to this woman's 76 years old. She owns a home, she owns a business, and she is on the verge of losing both. And you just wonder, in what universe is that okay to do to millions of people? And I'll just point people back to Monday's video where the physician in the UK points out the erroneous data that we're using to come up with all of this stuff. This comes from a woman in New Jersey. I live in New Jersey. My father has recently passed away, and I was unable to see him or even provide him with a decent burial. They cremated him, and that's not what he wanted or what I wanted. I feel horrible when they say he died of COVID, which I don't believe. My father was 87 years old. and he was never the same after our mother passed away in November of 1998. It was my father's wishes to be buried with my mom and not be cremated. I feel horrible that I could not even hold my father's hand. I know he would have loved to see me and his grandchildren. I know he was scared, and nobody to hold his hand is just disgusting. I'd like to file a lawsuit against our governor for not allowing me to be with my father, who suffered all alone for months. And I think this is the thing that, I've done some talking this week about reaching people who are just adamant that anybody who wants to operate their business is selfish, and that people who want to see their family members are selfish, and they don't understand the sacrifice that we should all be making. When you read these stories, what kinds of sacrifices are we making, and to what end? This next one comes, this is great moments in public health. My grandson is a 12-year-old special ed student in a hybrid school program, 2 days in person, 3 days virtual in New York State. His school is old, there's no air conditioning, masks are required. Last Sunday, my grandson went to bed about 10. He got up late for school the next day. In his haste to get to school, he left the house without eating or drinking anything. He remembered his lunch but forgot to grab his water. It was a warm day and with a temperature over 80 degrees, and it was also gym day. When he got to school, he realized that all the water fountains were sealed off due to COVID. So not letting people have water is a great moment in public health. He asked his teacher for water and was told the school does not provide bottled water. Nearly dehydrated after gym class, he was really thirsty. He hadn't had anything to drink since the night before. He asked at lunch if he could have some water or milk. They told him no, because he did not get a school lunch. His fellow classmates were not allowed to give him anything to drink due to COVID. By the time I picked him up, he was so thirsty he begged me for my warm, half-consumed bottle of water that I'd forgotten to take out of the hot car the previous day. When we got to the house, he immediately drank 2 16-ounce bottles of water. My grandson went for over 20 hours without anything to drink. It breaks my heart to think that a thirsty child would be denied water due to COVID. What are we doing, people? What are we doing? Who's in favor of this? Who is in favor of this? Tell me how this is beneficial. Children don't get water when they're thirsty. What are we teaching these kids? All right. Some schools are instituting no talking lunch periods to fight COVID-19. Many school districts reopened at the end of the summer after closing in March. Lunchrooms are one of the few places where children are consistently unmasked, because apparently you do need to do that when eating. At least 4 districts in Rhode Island have imposed lunches in which students are either forbidden from talking or required to talk quietly. Apparently, quiet talking is helpful. Local station WPRI reported that one academic defended the practice, arguing the difference between breathing and talking is about 75-fold in regards to respiratory emissions, like the droplets and small aerosols that come out. So a silent lunch, where you take away the interactions of walking down hallways and mixing pods, actually becomes a safer option than moving the kids. So in other words, these kids should sit at their desk and eat silently. The San Francisco school in California has reportedly instituted no talking during lunch rule, as has a Jewish day school in New Jersey. Though the convention is being deployed as a public health measure, silent lunch has historically been used by school authorities as a punishment tactic for unruly students. Again, I really don't have much affection for people who harm adults, but I have a particular dislike for people who would do this to children. Thirsty children don't get water, and little children are supposed to sit in a room social distance from one another and not talk. I've said, get your kids out of these schools. We can help you. Go to makeamericans.freeagain.com. Ask for individual help if you need it, but this is not a safe environment for children. And then I just almost, I can't even believe what I'm going to read to you next. How to do CPR in COVID land. If you find someone collapsed, you should first perform a primary survey. Don't place your face close to theirs. So it's kind of hard sometimes to tell if somebody's breathing if you don't do that. So if the person is unresponsive and not breathing, ask a helper to call emergency while you start CPR. Ask your helper to put the phone on speaker and hold it toward you so that they can maintain the right distance. If you're on your own, use the hands-free speaker on a phone so you can start CPR. Before you start CPR, use a towel or piece of clothing and lay it over the mouth and nose of the casualty. You've got somebody who's unconscious, and now what you're going to do is you're going to cover the person's mouth and nose. Start CPR, and then it talks about how to do that. And then it says continue to do it till emergency arrives. And by the way, it says if the helper, don't ever, let me see if I can find this here. You should not ever get close to the person. In other words, never administer mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. So basically, if the person you take a person who's unconscious, you cover their mouth and nose and make sure that you remain distant from them, and do not use mouth-to-mouth resuscitation because it would just be better to let the person die. I would never do that. I mean, I can't imagine under what circumstance and what risk. I can't imagine a risk I wouldn't take to try to save somebody who is unconscious and unresponsive, including administering CPR to a person who's, I mean, I can't imagine what condition they would have to be in or what condition the world would have to be in where I would not help somebody. And in this particular case, people are specifically being told to do things that are dangerous, covering the person's mouth and nose and not administering mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Unbelievable. Not even getting close enough to accurately assess the situation. All right, so anyway, great moments in public health, right? So we'll finish on some good news. A couple of weeks ago, and I record these a week before, just so you know, all in one day, which is why the same shirt. Some of you still write me about that. But anyway, I just missed the cutoff when I was recording last week's videos. Governor Ron DeSantis announced on Friday a week ago that the state is moving into reopening phase, and and just basically opening the economy. And so full capacity for restaurants, and he basically vacated all fines that had been levied for mask violations and all that sort of thing at the county and city level. I understand from some talking to some people in Florida that there are still issues going on with the counties and cities not wanting to give up some of the restrictions, but I think that will become increasingly difficult to maintain. And I also think that unless there's some way to gin up some cases or do something that makes it look bad, it's going to be difficult for governors and other states to continue the lockdowns the way that they are right now, because things are seeming to work out pretty well in Florida. Now, they are not at no cases, but I want to remind you, a person who tests positive is not a case. A person who has serious symptoms of flu, that's a case, all right? So the business of what you really want to look at is how many people are in the hospital. And in many cases here in Ohio, for example, these counties will be labeled, they've got some ridiculous color coding thing that they're using, but it'll be labeled the most serious one, and there are 3 people in the hospital. In what universe does 3 people in the hospital, is that some reason to keep everything shut down and to not let people sit beside each other at church and that kind of thing? So anyway, we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting to watch, not only from the standpoint of seeing Florida come back to life, but seeing how what happens in Florida may make it very difficult for other states to continue to do what they're doing. So now we have 2 open states that are opening, Florida and Pennsylvania, assuming that Governor Wolf follows or Emperor Wolf, I call him, follows the judge's orders, which is to stop the nonsense. He tried to appeal and get a stay, and the judge said, you can appeal, but I'm not giving you a stay on the order from the lower court, which is to let people have their constitutional rights back. Okay, that's enough for now. So remember, if you're interested in our depression and anxiety support groups, careers, our conference coming up, some of the new courses we have, chronic fatigue, Cancer 201 and alternative treatments, a teleconference with our attorney on Sunday. My email address is pampopper@msn.com. Pass this on to others who you think would like to know the truth about what's happening in our world today, and I will be back to you next week with more news.